Hello and welcome to the Pastor Well podcast. This is Hershael York, the Dean of the School of Theology at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm also pastor of the Buck Run Baptist Church in Frankfort. The Pastor Well podcast is dedicated to helping those who serve the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ be faithful in their ministry. And this is a special live edition coming to you from Alumni Chapel on Southern's campus. Let's hear that. Crowd. Hey, great to have you, and it is a great delight to have one of my absolute favorite preachers, one of my favorite people, Alistair Begg, pastor of Parkside Church in Cleveland, Ohio, radio Bible teacher on Truth for Life. Welcome. Glad to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, you've got a funny accent.
So do you.
Tell us where you're from.
Well, I was born in Glasgow, Scotland, and lived there for the greater part of my life until I came to America, and then I've lived longer now in America than I lived back in the UK.
You came to the U.S. in 1983.
83. Yep.
As pastor of Parkside.
Yeah, I came at the invitation of that church. They had, I think, exhausted invitations to people in America that knew where Cleveland was, and they thought, well, maybe we'll try somebody who doesn't know where it is. Maybe he'll come. And so.
How many people were there then?
6. No. We got the same 6. They're probably, on a Sunday, there were probably about 400 people there. Yeah.
And it's grown quite a bit since then.
Yeah, not meteorically, but it's been consistent, steady, and so now probably on Sundays our congregation is 10 times what that was. Yeah.
You have one service?
3 services in the morning, and then I have an evening service as well, which is different from the morning services.
So how many times a week do you prepare a sermon?
Well, if just in
those
terms
two?
of Parkside,
yeah,
I would have those 2, unless I'm doing something like coming here. Yeah.
When you go somewhere and preach, do you typically preach something you've preached before?
Yeah, well, often I do. I sometimes out of necessity, and sometimes because I've been asked to do that, and sometimes because it's just what's uppermost in my thinking. Mm-hmm. This evening, I haven't preached that before.
What you preached tonight
yes.
here at Southern?
No, I haven't preached that before, and which was probably pretty obvious. It needs a little more practice.
I thought it was fantastic, your sermon on 1 Thessalonians 4. Mm-hmm. Really outstanding. I don't mean to just flatter you, but I will tell you, when people ask me, who's your favorite preacher? Most often, it's your name that I say.
Yeah.
I love to hear you preach.
Well, it's interesting. People ask me, they say, who's your favorite, professor at a seminary? It's usually your name, I say.
I'm sure you get asked that a lot, don't you? Yeah. Oh, well, when in your 36 years at Parkside, what's the takeaway? What have you learned about pastoring, specifically there or in general? Anything you want to share?
Well, the idea that I think it's somebody like Tillich or something like that who says, that the pulpit draws the preacher the way the sea draws the sailor. That mm-hmm. sense of being a sense of call that creates its own pool, its own urgency.
Right.
And that every time you have completed it, on a Sunday evening, you just breathe for a brief time, and then you've got a clean sheet of paper and another series of verses, which is both the demand of it and also the wonder of it. I think I would say that, at this point, after 36 years, I'm not in any sense jaded. I don't feel like I have got a handle on it to the extent that, this is what I do. It still presses me to my knees. It still reveals to me, just how desperately the preacher is in need of divine enablement. Mm-hmm. People hear our voices, but we want for them to hear God's voice.
Are you an advocate of long-term pastors? Do you think that's the ideal? I mean,
Well,
it's what you've done. Do you think
yeah.
it's what
Well,
everybody should do?
Well, I think, if somebody had said to me in '83 that in 2019 you'll still be there, I think I would probably have disavowed that, and I probably would have recoiled from it. At this vantage point, I would never have changed anything, because there are peculiar benefits to being in a place over a long haul. In some senses, marrying the children of the children that
Right.
you married, seeing the ebb and flow of life, staying somewhere over the long haul. With that being said, though, not everybody has had the privilege of a congregation such as mine,
Right.
nor does everybody have the same aspirations. And I don't think the secret lies in longevity or in brevity, but just being in the place of God's appointing. Some people, I think, are very, very good at starting things up and launching them and moving on. They might not have the same dogged capacity just to
Right.
stay with it.
That's a good observation. Was there a year in which you'd say, man, things turned? Like, I would say for me, it was like after about year 7. I think
Yeah.
it took 7 years. Was there a year like that for you?
Well, when I came in '83, I assumed that the things that they had told me, they understood and believed. They understood them and believed them.
That was foolish.
That
of you.
was, yeah. That was a big mistake. And so I decided that I wouldn't go home to the UK for at least 3 years, because I was frightened that if I went home, I might never come back. I'd seen some of my friends do that. And, excuse me, and so as an act of discipline, I stayed that out. But when I went home, I realized that the connection was not actually there between the pulpit and the pew, not in the way that I had envisaged. I was pulling the rope pretty strong, but the bell wasn't ringing. And during that summer at home, I realized that's because the bell is not attached to the rope, in terms of what I said about a theological understanding that was verbalized but not understood. And so in year 4, then I realized I've got to start at a more fundamental level with an understanding of what this is and what the church is and what it's not and so on. And then that went for probably another 4 years. And then I would say right around year 7 as well. Then it was actually at year 7, I reached the point where I thought I've probably done about as much as I can do here. I've run out of all my ideas. And that was a real turning point as well there.
Good stuff started happening then?
Well, what I did was I said to the people, I think I've shot my wad. And one of my elders said, no, I don't think you have. He said, I think you're lazy. And I said, well, okay. I said, but I don't think I'm lazy. I think I'm incompetent. And so he says, well, then you're going to have to prove that you're incompetent. And so I did. And at that point, we looked for somebody in the congregation who could staff my incapacities, quite honestly. Mm-hmm. Instead of moving me on to some other place or allowing me to continue with my own level of incompetency. And that was when a fellow who was an elder in our church felt God moving him in that direction, and he came to become the director of ministry in the church and brought all the gifts and graces that I don't have to the equation, which allowed him to thrive, the pastoral team to develop and deepen, and for me to be able to do what I was able to do.
Yeah, I think if I have any genius at all, and I probably don't, but the closest thing to it is that I know how to put people around me.
Sure.
To staff to my weaknesses, and
Yeah.
the people whom I trust and who do those things so that I can do what I do.
I agree.
It makes all the difference in the world, and it's the difference between swimming upstream and
Yeah.
going with being in the current where it carries you.
Yeah, and it also acknowledges in a realistic way the fact that all of us are better together than any one of us is on our own.
What year did Truth for Life begin?
Maybe 99 or something like that. Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that ministry, what it does.
Well, now it goes all over the place, especially, with the development of this kind of thing and the internet. Initially, we were invited to go on the radio. I wouldn't cross the street to hear myself preach. I mean, I leave pastoral ministry on Sunday evenings regularly. So the idea of that was alien to me. And that came about as a result of actually Moody Bible Institute initially. And they put us on 3 radio stations on a weekly basis. I think we got about 1 letter in 2 years proving that somebody was listening. And it didn't seem to do anything at all. And then a man asked the question, why is this not on a daily basis? And the answer for that was similar to the initial answer. Well, why would we do that? When we did that, then it began to build some traction. And as a result of that, it's just developed from there. And it's given us an amazing reach throughout the country. I mean, we're on every major market in the country. And then, on Sirius and all those other things. And then the internet. It's just an extension of the pulpit, though. That's all it is. I mean, I don't do anything. As long as I stay true to my calling, then other people make that happen. And if they stop making it happen tomorrow, then there would be a few people disappointed, but it wouldn't make 1 iota of difference to my life as the pastor of the local church.
I understand. Hey, my wife and I like James Taylor. Mm-hmm. So we've heard him in concert like at least 30 times.
Wow.
First time I heard him, I was 15, Pine Knob, outside of Detroit, New York.
I've been to Pine Knob.
Yeah.
I saw the Carpenters there.
Oh, well, that's edgy.
Yeah.
These guys didn't even know who the Carpenters were.
No, they're going like,
what?
Got hammered.
They may not know who James Taylor is.
Yeah.
He's now 71 years old,
Yep.
still selling out stadiums. You have a James Taylor story.
Yeah.
Tell us about the time you met James Taylor, how it happened, and what you said to him.
Well, it was, I'm a huge fan of James Taylor and Paul Simon, probably, in terms of lyrics and style. But Sue and I were heading to Hawaii, and we were in the airport in Los Angeles, and we were in the United Club. And a man and a woman walked into the club, and as they walked past me, I realized that's James Taylor. And he didn't come back, but the lady that he was with came back. Turned out she was his manager on the West Coast. And so I said to her, today's my wife's 50th birthday, and if you get James to sign a card for her, I won't tell everyone in the club that he's here. because he was incognito. He had a hat on, and he was not interested in getting up. So she said, okay, and she went away. And she came back, and James came beside her and ignored me entirely and said to Sue, so I guess you must be the birthday girl. And she said yes, and he took a chair and he turned it around, and he stood half sat on the back of the chair and engaged her in conversation for the longest time, and was immensely humble and phenomenally kind. So much so that we got a call from the front desk that said, if there is a Begg or Taylor party in the room, you better get out of here because you're both going to miss your flights.
Oh, really?
But that was the level of engagement with the guy that he was. And I talked to him about how he went to an Anglican boarding school. I talked to him about the influence of hymns in the structure of his songwriting. And we talked about Scottish folk music, and eventually he went in his pocket and he wrote his telephone number on his card and he gave it to me. He says, my wife plays with the Boston Symphony,
right.
She'll come to Cleveland sometime, and then maybe we can get together again. And we met him one more time when he came in to play at Cleveland, but I didn't want to bug him beyond that. So,
man, that's an incredible story.
It was the humility of the guy that was most striking.
Yeah, he definitely seems that way.
Yeah.
I could talk about his lyrics and all that all night long. So that's one of my favorite things. The other thing a lot of people, especially these guys, young guys, don't know about, you were in a movie.
Oh, come on.
Oh, man, I got to talk about it. I see it on the Golf Channel all the time, the Bobby Jones movie,
Yeah.
Now, how did it happen?
It shouldn't have happened. If anyone's seen it, they know. I mean, the long and the short of it is, I met a guy who was a producer on this movie, this golf movie, and they ran into a problem with a Scottish actor who had shot one of the scenes in St. Andrews, and he couldn't contractually get into the States on the day they needed. And this fellow phoned me up and said, listen, I'm begging on you. I mean, could you do this? I said, I've never been in a school play. How could I do this? He says, don't worry, it's easy. You can do it. I know you can do it. And so I came here to Atlanta, and the rest, as they say, is history. It's don't go looking for it, fellas. You'll find it in like Home Depot, next to the disused hammer section.
Or the Golf Channel plays it all the time. They play it like every
the
week.
royalties are rolling in.
Yeah, I bet they
yeah.
are.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Did you enjoy it?
Oh, it was great. It scared the bejabbers out of me initially, but it introduced me into, it took me into an unreached peoples group. I mean, the guys that were doing all the continuity and stuff, most of them were homosexual. And I have never been in that kind of situation where I have to, engage and everything. And I said to Sue in the course of 2 weeks on the movie set, I said, if the average church extended the kind of welcome to total strangers that this group of people have extended to you and me, man, we would set the place on fire. I mean, that was, I think, the most striking thing to me, how genuinely decent everybody was. Amazing.
Well, I think you did great in it. You and Susan married in 1975?
75, yeah.
How many children do you have?
We have 3 children, a son who's as yet unmarried, 2 married daughters, 2 son-in-laws, 7 grandchildren.
7 grandchildren. How's that?
It's fantastic.
Isn't it, though?
No, it's just so good. I could weep thinking about my grandchildren.
Yeah, well, I do. I mean,
Yeah, and you know what I find the hardest? I don't know about you. Sometimes I lie in my bed at night and project, and then I realize I won't be here for that. And it's the pain of the earthly pilgrimage. Yeah. And even the prospect of eternity actually is insufficient for me to act as an anodyne in that moment.
Yeah, I'm not that dark.
Yeah.
No, my daughters-in-law and my sons will send us pictures,
Yeah.
especially lying in bed at night. We're pulling them up.
Yeah.
And, they each have we have 5.
Yep.
They each have their personalities.
What ages are they?
The oldest is 9.
Same for me.
And the youngest one is like 19 months now, I think. And, 2 boys and 3 girls. And, man, we raised sons, my 2 sons, who are both in ministry. And so the boys can't get away with anything with me. But the girls can do anything they want. They totally wrap me around their fingers. And, it's just,
What do they call you?
Papa.
Yeah, me too.
That's what Dr. Moeller gets called, too,
It does.
It's a magical sound, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Papa.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm done.
Yeah.
When I hear it.
It's horrible. I drove to school yesterday morning, and maybe it was this morning. I can't remember now. Is one of the last 2 days? No, I think it was this morning.
Yeah, it goes back.
But they had to go, Papa, we need to leave early. Why? You got to go to the gas station and buy Mentos.
And you did it.
Yeah, those Mentos cost $1.89 a packet. Do you know how hard that is for a Scotsman?
But for your grandchildren, you'll do it.
Can you share? No. Oh, come on.
Well, talk about you and Susan. How has she been supportive in your ministry?
I think I don't say it enough to her, and I don't make a fuss about it in public, but in your own life, for sure, there is no me without her. I mean, there is no pastoral ministry apart from. I lose count in a day of how many times she says, "Have you been in touch with so and so? Did you do this? Have you done that? What about her? That kind of thing. So she acts almost as a second conscience to me in one sense. And, just that prayerful sense of companionship, of the genuine friendship that is built into it. I mean, I stole from Abigail Adams the phrase, my dearest friend, when she wrote to John Adams.
Right. So
she just wrote MDF. And when I watched that, I said, oh, that's good. I like MDF. And so that's it. And I hear people say that, and I used to think, oh, it sounds a little cliched, but no, she's crucial.
I understand. What do you do to keep your relationship connected?
Well-regulated domestic affection is one, yeah. Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah. We read together, we pray together, we go places together. I mean, people say, so what do you do? And I say, nothing. They say, well, you can't be nothing. Right. So, we're great at nothing. Because, where you're in, isn't it great when you're with somebody and you don't have to say anything?
Yeah.
And you're just there. And so that sense of, to quote Phil Collins, two hearts living in just one life, yeah.
All right, my oldest son just died that you quoted Phil Collins.
Oh, really?
He hates Phil Collins.
Him. Okay, yeah.
But
so we'll cut that part out.
I was going to be a little more biblical and just say it's one flesh.
There you go.
I mean, it is just one flesh.
Yes, it is.
A personal question, do you go to bed together at the same time at night?
Try to.
Yeah.
But last night I had to go out because my daughter was staying. I think I went out 3 times and said, honey, could you please come to bed because you wake me up after I get into my cruise zone, and that really ticks me off. And I have to go to Louisville tomorrow, please. The fact is, I'm a big morning guy.
Uh-huh.
She's a nighttime person. Uh-huh. So we have to effect compromises.
Right. Are there things you do for her on a regular basis, like anything that you do to serve her, minister her, or is it pretty much one-sided the other way?
No. Well, if you asked her that, she might say, I don't know. I think I've actually heard people ask another question, and she said, he writes me notes. And I am a note writer, and I have a philosophy that if I have something bad that I need to convey to you, I'm not going to write it down and give it to you. I'm going to say it so that we can deal with it in a sort of existential moment and be done with it. But if I've got something good I want to say to you, I'm going to write it down.
So I can keep it.
So, well, you can keep it, or at least I've expended myself in that way. Yeah, I mean, I get her coffee in the morning before she does me. Goodness, I take the bins down for crying out loud.
So, you mentioned going to Hawaii. When you go on vacation, do you guys just do nothing?
Yeah. So we try to go place. I was speaking at a conference. That was why actually that Hawaii thing. I was again speaking in a church called the Hawaii Kai Church in Honolulu.
Do you go to Oahu?
Yes, okay. That was where we were.
Yeah, we go to the Big Island.
Yeah,
we were there when you got the missile warning came.
Oh, really?
Got it on our phone. Take cover. Inbound missile. This is not a drill.
Never came.
We were we were there, and I said, "Darling, just enough time
what a
for
way to
well-regulated."
Yeah. You said, "Where's my Charles Bridges book?"
Yeah. So, what are you preaching right now? What are you preaching through?
1 Samuel. I preached Reformation Sunday as a good Presbyterian. People don't know if it's a joke or not, but anyway, they know. I deliberately did that because I've been out of the pulpit for I think a month of Sundays, and since it was Reformation Sunday, it gave me a chance to speak about grace and faith and Jesus, and every so often I think it's timely for our congregation to have a very sort of overtly evangelistic address and calling people to faith in Christ. Now, this Sunday, I'll go back to 1 Samuel and chapter 16.
When you preach like an evangelistic sermon like that, how do you invite people to come to Christ? What method do you use in your church to give them a way to respond?
Yeah, the answer is not the same every time. I will sometimes say that you may find yourself at this point saying, well, I don't know what I do here. And perhaps you think there is a certain thing or way that you have to do what you have to do. I said, I'm just going to pray now, a prayer that would allow you to pray along with me in your heart. And so I would use that. Routinely, Sunday by Sunday, I would say that we have here copies of the Gospel of John and this and that and the next thing. We also have, through the doors to your left and my right, a prayer room where we would love to have you come and talk and pray and follow through if you find yourself saying, there's something I need to do about this. And so that would be largely the way we do it. We have only very seldom have I done a sort of standard Southern Baptist altar call. And anytime I've done it, I haven't done it in the moment, but I've done it out of a sense of obedience because against the run of play, it's been pressed upon me, like on a Tuesday when it's raining, like out of the blue. And on each occasion that has happened, a significant number of people actually profess faith in Christ. And maybe that would argue for doing it every Sunday. I don't know, but I don't.
What's been your favorite sermon series? Do you have one you look back through and say, man, I loved preaching that?
Well, interestingly, someone was just speaking to me now about Joseph and the series that we did on Joseph, which gave us the book, The Hand of God. I think I've enjoyed those. I think I've enjoyed Old Testament narrative as much as anything because it's pressed me. I don't find it necessarily easy to handle. And so in order to do it, it's been demanding, and then it's been a discovery. For ages, I couldn't preach the book of Ruth. I couldn't get a handle on how you get from this little story to Jesus. I heard other people do it, but when I tried to do it, I couldn't get there. And then one day I finally figured it out. The same in terms of Esther, the book of Esther, that I launched into with some trepidation, and before long I was caught up in the whole narrative again. It's a bit like when people say, "What's your favorite book?" It's usually the book that I'm just reading.
Yeah, right. I understand that. That's an incredible feeling when that handle does come to you. It's like,
that's
the
right.
door opens.
That's right.
Light comes in.
Yeah.
I see this
I
unfolded.
see it, yeah.
So, are you philosophically as a preacher, where like when you're preaching through 1 Samuel, that every sermon must relate to Christ in every time you preach, you're going to get there?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that since the Bible is a book about salvation, and since Jesus came to bring salvation, then it would be strange if the focal point of it doesn't get us there at some point. Sometimes we get to Jesus because of his absence in a passage. And he's the part that's missing.
Right.
But in terms of like Saul, it's crying out that people are going, well, who is this guy? They're looking for a king that's better than this king. And their story is in chaos apart from a king that will do this. And it's not difficult then to move from there to, ultimately the king to which all of this points.
But you don't necessarily say you see that in the text. That's a homiletical move you make.
Yes.
Yeah, different
Yeah.
thing, yeah. What preachers do you listen to, or have you that have shaped you? I mean, going back to your youth.
Yeah. Well, the preacher, I had the privilege of hearing Lloyd Jones preach, when I was a younger man. And that was an event like nothing else. It was peculiar that this man did what he did in the way that he did and with such profound impact, little Welshman. John Stott I loved as well because of the clarity, and there were no histrionics in Stott. He's not dependent on any style or anything. I mean, his style is like no style.
Yeah,
it's like watching paint dry in some ways. I mean, when he gets excited, it's like, I'm excited. You know? Oh, thanks for letting me know. Dick Lucas, another Anglican. Eric Alexander in Scotland. James S. Stewart. I mean, these are all British guys. In America, John MacArthur, especially in the early days, I thought, golly, this guy, he's relentless, you know. I don't know what else, but he's certainly not going to do anything other than say, this is what it says. And I really respected him for that. Tim Keller, I've enjoyed listening to, but he's beyond me. I can't do what he does, you know, so I don't feel jealous of him. I'm only jealous of people that I might even be able to make a stab at it, you know, but when people, so I can't be jealous of Stott or Lloyd Jones, or I'm not really that jealous. I'm a little jealous of you and that tie.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
I'll let you have it.
Yeah.
What do you have any books on preaching that you think all preachers should read?
Well, Preaching and Preachers, by Lloyd Jones, yeah. Charles Bridges on the Christian ministry, I think. Stott's book on preaching between two worlds, as it was in the UK edition at least, or I can't remember what they call it. Did they call it here? James Stewart stuff, with his lectures at the Yale Divinity School in 52. If any of that stuff by James S. Stewart, not for the same reasons as these other guys, but for somebody who just had capacity in language and was able to lead you along, not only logically, but lyrically and wonderfully, you know.
Do you remember the first sermon you preached?
I remember at college, where you got one shot at doing morning chapel in the 3 years that you were there.
What college was this?
This was at London Bible College, or London School of Theology, as they call it now, taking it up market. But I've preached on Habakkuk 3, though the fig tree will not flourish and there's no fruit on the vine.
That's a great text.
Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. That was about a 6-minute sermon. I think the first one I preached in America when I was still just 20 or something at an evening service in the church, I preached from Philippians 4. Yeah.
How do you pray as you prepare? Is there a methodology to it, or is it just sort of
real short? Help! I mean, that's what I was saying when after dinner, and I went up the stairs. I mean, that was pretty well it. You know, there wasn't a lot going on. Just, Lord, I got about 7 minutes here. Help. Preach. Yeah, I mean, praying in prospect of the preparation, praying during in the preparation, praying, it's like Brother Lawrence practicing the presence of Christ, I talk out loud in my study. I talk out loud in my car. Lord, I'm going here. I don't know whether my motives are good or bad. And if I said they were good and they're bad, then I couldn't fool you anyway. So let's just be clear about that, And the Lord's going, well, I am clear about that. So that is really, that is it.
Do you discuss your sermons with Susan?
Very little. I'm frightened to.
How about afterward? Do you, like on Sunday at lunch?
Yeah.
Do you talk about it?
No, we don't. I mean, in the
Are you afraid of what she'd say?
Yeah. She will say to me routinely, honey, I don't know how you do this. And I'm assuming that that's positive. So, no, Sue says more by her silence than she does by her words.
How do you think about sermon delivery? I I think we might have some differences here.
Yeah.
Tell me how do you think about the way a sermon should be delivered, or not?
Yeah.
Are you largely unself-conscious about that?
Yes.
So you don't even all right. Like I
Right.
just watched you preach,
Right.
and there was some illustration there you were using. You were about you and a friend on an escalator. And,
Oh, yeah.
And he
Yeah, he
there's
said,
some
"Look at it."
scantily
Yeah,
clad
yeah. And I said,
mannequins or
"Oh."
something. And, yeah. All right. And when you did that,
Right.
all right, it was just perfect. I mean, it was just spot on.
Yeah.
I think it's a function of your personality.
Right.
But what about the guy who doesn't have that good of a personality?
Yeah.
Or that he's not effective.
Right.
By the way, that's a large number of preachers. I know I've been preaching
Sure.
here for almost 23 years. Should a guy be free to practice in front of the mirror? Or how do you think about that? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, in terms of just learning communication skills, in being helped by our wives or whatever. So Sue will say to me, "Hey, you're getting that tone again," and then I say, "Oh, bad." She said, "Yeah, pretty bad." It's like when you get to, it's a bit like Steve Lawson, right? And I love Steve, but he's got that. It's like a weed eater or something, you know. And I want to say, Steve, you got to drop it down, man. You got to, because it has to.
He gave me that pen, by the way.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Never gave me a pen. That's probably
no
right.
wonder. No wonder.
No, but I say that because I see my own sins best in other people.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So
That's right.
so I need to work on that. And so I have volume, loud, quiet, pace, fast, slow,
Right.
pitch, high, low, tone. And tone is it's intangible, but it's crucial because the people are listening going, the first question, is this guy for real or is he blowing smoke? Is he more concerned about how he's coming across than whether I understand his message? Is he want to make people understand that he's actually clever, or is he concerned that I would understand who Christ is? All of those questions are out there in the mind of the listener.
Right.
We can't be preoccupied with them necessarily in the moment, but we do have to think them out in preparation.
That's right.
And so we got to come to it then on our knees. And you know, I always say to to Dan, who's here with me, I say to Dan, "Hey, Dan, you go preach, be yourself and forget yourself. Be yourself and forget yourself." And it's the forget yourself part that is the thing. So that illustration, I didn't have that in my notes. I decided in that moment, just in thinking about it, maybe this would be helpful here because it actually contextualizes the thing in a real world moment. And then my own response to it, I surprised myself by that. Because, because I wasn't going to do that. But here's the thing. Stoddy would never have done that.
Stott would never.
He wouldn't need to.
No.
He doesn't need to. Because, see, and my guys who preach, like I have another Dan in the church, and he was an engineer. He went to Duke and did engineering. So his progression of thought is linear. It's like an engineer coming through. There's nothing particularly dramatic. There's no big highs. There's no dreadful lows. It's just a steady, gradual movement onto you. And man, I envy that because my approach is artistic rather than linear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm going around in.
It's a painting, not a building.
I'm going around in circles. I don't know where I'm going half the time.
Yeah. Well, I can't say it enough. I love to hear you preach. I love to watch you preach. You just have a genuineness and a a reality about you that I think the Lord uses, and I love watching you.
I appreciate your encouragement, especially coming from the professor of pastoral theology and preaching.
Well, you're
I
a
wish
model.
I'd been in your class.
Well, you don't need to be in my class. I sit in yours.
Yeah.
All right. I like to end every Pastor Well podcast with what I call the twinkling of an eye round. I'm just going to ask you
Okay.
rapid fire questions, just whatever you want to answer. All right. Your favorite vacation spot?
Italy.
Your favorite secular author?
Oh, at the moment, Robert Harris.
Do you own any pets?
Lots of pens.
Pets?
Pets? Oh, I thought you said pens. No, I do own lots of pens. At the moment, we have one cat. One died.
All right. Would you be in another movie?
Yes.
What's your dream car? If you could have any car, what would you love to have?
Aston Martin DB11.
Oh, what's the best round of golf you've ever shot?
78 in Michigan. Never broken lower than that.
Okay. Have you ever been to Glasgow, Kentucky?
I don't think so.
All right. What do you call a citizen of Glasgow, Scotland?
A Glaswegian.
What do you call a citizen of Glasgow, Kentucky?
I don't know.
Blessed. And we have been blessed to have you.
Thank
I
you.
just want to say thank you for being on Pastor Well. It's a joy to have you as always. Hey, thanks to all of you for being with us tonight for this live Pastor Well podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that if you've not yet subscribed, you'll do so on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Hopefully, my voice will be back on Pastor Well.